Hello viewers, it's time for some action on this week's Daily Race C, a race which I have not done yet, but looks very interesting because we have to use the hard and the soft tyre. Kind of an interesting little gap there, not having to use the medium. But let's jump into this first one. Starting at the back, 15th, therefore we're going to go on the hard tyre to begin with. This race has actually come up a few times before, the 10 lap around Watkins Glen. I think it was pretty much a year ago, when it was actually one of my favourite races of the year. So hopefully it lives up to the standard once again. Let's take a look. With race number 1, starting 15th out of 16. At the back of the pack, I didn't bother to qualify for this. Just wanted to jump in and see how I could do. Now initially here, we are going to gain a position, courtesy of this French player in the Toyota Supra slowing down and going to the back of the pack. Now, the Toyota Supra and the Nissan GTR, which I'm driving, probably the two most popular choices for this circuit and two of the quickest cars in Group 3 at the moment. However, there are some other choices being made. For example, the Mazda just up in front and the BMW just behind. Two very popular choices for this race as well. Into the chicane, the Mazda gets the position against the Supra. And in this early phase of the race, it's really a case of just trying to settle down and work out the strategy and try to pick your way through a couple of positions. We are going for the hard tyre initially, as we mentioned at the start of the video. We have to use the hard tyre and then the soft, or the soft and then the hard. Do it either way round. But typically, if you're starting at the back, it's better to go with the harder tyre. Now we're going to go up the inside here, into the toe of the boot. And it looks like we can gain the position, but having to take a slightly tighter, narrower line off the corner doesn't quite lend itself to me, and so the Toyota manages to get a boost on the exit as we all overtake someone serving a penalty. The BMW gets a better exit and is on my right hand side. I have to leave the space, and I am going to have to concede the position here as the cars in front start fighting. As we look around the outside then of this Supra, unfortunately for that guy, he's going to get tipped into a spin and is sent hurtling towards the wall. Parallel meeting. Not parallel, a perpendicular meeting with barrier, which is suboptimal at this early phase of the race. I mean, it's suboptimal at any point of the race, really. So that's lap number 1. We started 15th, now 13th. The BMW ahead, slow off the turn. And so the Croatian driver in the GTR is going to have a look into the first corner, but doesn't really fully commit. So I had no real space to go. I couldn't decide quickly enough. And unfortunately, that's going to put me on the back foot here, as the GTR comes up on my right hand side. Fortunately enough for me, the French player in the Supra gives me a massive boost. Look at that, maybe gaining 5 to 10 miles an hour suddenly. And now I'm challenging the Croatian driver once again. Looking around the outside, it's going to be quite a brave move, but he puts himself in a very narrow line on the way in, which really compromised his entry speed. And luckily enough, I was able to challenge. A bit later on in the lap number 2, as you can see up in front, a couple of people serving penalties, and this is why this race is so good, because there are so many cars in such close contention. And as you can see here, the midfield from myself in 12th, we're looking up to the battle for about 4th or 5th place there. So many cars fighting within not much space, and so you really do have to be on it in this type of race. In towards the first corner, lap number 3. Bit of contact I spot between the Mazda and the Supra, battling for 9th place. So at the back straight on the slipstream. We're not quite close enough to really go for a move here, but with cars so close to each other, it's really a case of just waiting and waiting for your moment to overtake and wait for your moment to strike, as there could quite easily be penalty or a mistake, or two guys going side by side, and that's always an opportunity to go for a move. So let's take a look here as we go through the penalty zone. The Supra behind looks very quick and I can't quite shake him, but he's not going to be close enough for a move here, as we're still right up behind the BMW. Supra there gets shafted quite wide, and we're going to go up the inside after initially looking to the outside, and the space is given and we are able to go up the inside and take 11th place. And we're going to take any position we can get, as this is always going to be hard fought in the mid-pack. With, well actually take a look at this. The Mazda goes into the pit lane, actually overcooks it, And that is the tricky thing about the pit entry line here at Watkins Glen, as the Mazda wanted to go in, didn't actually quite slow down enough, I don't think, because he went over the line. And then because you're right on the racing line, you can affect the car behind you. So the BMW actually having to slow down as a result of that. I gained 2 positions as a result. Fortunately enough for me, the BMW, as you can see, doesn't quite have enough straight line speed. It is very good around this track on this race. However, I think its inherent weakness is its straight line speed on that back straight. So lap 4 now, through the toe of the boot, and then you see here just not quite releasing the brake early enough, and that's just going to give me lots of understeer mid-corner and give the invitation for the BMW to get back up my inside. And this is really frustrating because this is the lap where I'm looking to come into the pit lane, and therefore losing a position this late in the lap, this late in the stint, is never ideal. However, all we can do is just continue with our race and hope that it's going to be enough. This BMW driver clearly very quick, so it's going to be quite tricky to beat him. Let's see what he does. Is he going to stay out? Yes, he is. Moves to the left. I'm going to take the right-hand side into the pit lane. And so this is an important moment in the race. Whew, really close race so far in that mid-pack. I think I can get well inside the top 10 here, but it's so closely fought. Oh, refuel. I did not need to refuel. Right, let's get back out there. That refueling could cost me. And unfortunately, it did. As you can see, the Supra that was behind me was now about 1.4 seconds in front. So perhaps lost about 2 seconds there by leaving the refueling. Too busy with trying to commentate the race and actually not remembering to cancel the refueling. But at the end of lap number 5, this is always the crucial point of the race, and this is always a really exciting part of the race for me, where the strategies converge and you realise what the race is going to be from here to the end. And look at that, the BMW and the Nissan GT-R coming out of the pit lane. I've got the higher amount of momentum here, so I'm going to try it around the outside. Luckily enough, the BMW does give me space, but can we get another position here with the momentum moving over to the left in the slipstream of the BMW? It's going to be quite hard fought around the outside here. We're going to keep our foot in. There's a bit of bumping between the two of us on the first apex, then the second. And around the outside, we just managed to sneak here into 8th place. So I've done just enough to keep this position. And it looks like we're going to gain another one here. With the BMW in front with a 1.5 second penalty, going very slowly here. Maybe on the hard tyre. And so we're going to gain that position before the penalty zone. So that's 7th place. However, we do have the 1 lap deficit in terms of tyre wear. Our tyres are going to be 1 lap worse off for the remainder of the race compared to these guys who have just come out with the fresh ones. And so there's quite a bit of space up in front. I do quite regret refueling or making the mistake of not checking, and so I couldn't remain with that Supra in front. The Supra in front actually was really quick in this stint, and here the BMW challenged, putting a nice little dummy on me actually, and I turned in. I didn't really know what side he went, and actually that was a really good move. When I looked at it on the replay, he sort of dummied one side and went to the other, and I turned in without knowing where he was. But ultimately the BMW was too quick, as you can see, skipping forward 1 lap, perhaps 3/4 of a second quicker on that previous lap than I was. He does get a penalty there, but as does the car behind, and that gives me a fair amount of space and a bit of breathing room to perhaps try and bring home P8. However, making this mistake here, just taking too much grass on the inside line, 1 second penalty, which unfortunately loses quite a lot of time. More than a second you actually lose from a 1 second penalty, funnily enough. And at the end of the race, you can see my front left was dying of death, or unless it already had died of death. So luckily enough, we were able to bring it home. It's only a 9th, but we did start in 15th, and so I was quite happy with the result. Whew, it's going to be a P9. That was a tough lobby. Very tough lobby. Lots of quick guys in there. So I think I'm going to have to qualify. And that's exactly what I did. Jumping into this session, my first lap was a 43.2, which was pretty good, and that would put me, not last. But then after many laps, about 7 laps here, lots of low 43s. So I knew I was consistent. But after watching the delta over those laps, I knew I could get into the 42s, and that's kind of the area you need to be if you want to qualify well in a top split lobby. And so after losing half a tenth in the first corner, coming into the chicane, carrying so much speed, you really have to be brave and committed and kind of abuse the track. It's no secret to say. I do actually gain over my personal best, carrying a lot of speed here. Braking on the 200 board, carrying the speed in, off the brake. You really have to do, really do have to get off the brake quite early to let the car breathe mid-corner and roll the speed through. Braking just before the 100 board, again, come off that brake, taking quite a nice narrow line here and maximising the track width on the exit. I am now 3.5 tenths up on a 43.1, so this could be a 42.8 if we continue that through to the end. I don't quite carry the speed through there as much as I could have done. However, through here, it's a case of being light on the pedal and then releasing, and you can accelerate quite early, a lot earlier than you think, and maximise the track width on the exit. And then here's about committing early. The GTR is really good through these final 2 corners. Lots of aerodynamic grip, and it's really about being brave, and it's really easy to turn in too late for that final corner. I don't quite carry the speed I could have done, but it is going to be a decent lap, a 1:42.8. Okay, 42.8, that will do. Alright, here we go, guys. Race number 2, 5th on the grid this time. Let's see what we can do. I'm going to start on the hard tyres again. Maybe do 5 laps on the hards rather than 4, but we'll see how the race goes. Everyone in front is not in a Nissan or Toyota. Fair play to those guys. So let's do battle for the second time. This time with a much better qualifying position. And so I should be able to have a much better battle here. Starting from 5th rather than 15th does help. I mean, that's kind of obvious, really, isn't it? And I'm sure I don't really have to tell you that. Anyway, we've got the Peugeot in front, a McLaren in front of that, and then second place we've got a Mazda, in the lead the BMW. So quite a lot of different cars on show here. A bit of weaving here, heading towards the chicane. I put myself up the inside just to really maybe distract the the Hungarian driver. Doesn't quite go for it. And here, the McLaren a little bit wide. These two guys can go side by side. A penalty for the McLaren. I look at this space here, I think, you know what, I can go for this, I'll try it. But I don't quite really get any supremacy on the corner. And so, it's going to be side by side on the exit. This is not going to work in my favour on the exit of this corner as it is a right-hander. And so I have to kind of just filter back into position here. Try the switcheroo, doesn't quite work though. As the McLaren then serves the penalty. We move up a position, up into 4th. Now you can see all this fighting and, slowing each other down has meant that the top 2 have pulled away. I mean, plus they are quick, so they are going to pull away naturally. But ideally, if you can remain in the slipstream of a quicker driver, quicker player for as long as possible, that can actually be massive for your race. You can just kind of get pulled along, gaining a couple of tenths per lap. However, on this occasion, those guys have just bolted very early. But now, my obvious and main priority is trying to get past the Hungarian in the Peugeot. Interesting choice for this race, and fair play for giving the car a go. Braking just after 300 board, but perhaps about 250 metres, releasing the brake back on the power by the time you get to the apex. And actually the Peugeot there not getting a good exit at all, and so that's going to give me the momentum onto the straight, up the hill, through the S's, and I'm up into 3rd position. A lot earlier than I would have thought, to be honest. However, here, this was quite a crucial moment, because he could have easily challenged and gone for the position back, but decided to give me a bump draft, and so wanted to work together. Perhaps seeing a GTR go through, or a Supra, it is sometimes a wise decision just to stick behind, stay in the slipstream as we just mentioned, rather than fighting and challenging. You're just going to lose lots of time. Sometimes you do just have to work with each other. Now strangely here, the car in front serves a penalty and then just drives really quite slow for the remainder of this lap. It looked like Velasco here in second place was very quick, keeping near enough in touch with the BMW out in the lead. But here just begins to drive fairly slow, a little bit offline, also presumably on the hard tyre. And so I was a little bit confused here as we come through the penultimate corner, carrying a lot of speed, as he does a good job there, but here makes a bit of a mistake as commits speed way too early, hits the wall, and that absolutely kills any sign of momentum. We're going to go for the move now, as I could get slipstreamed up the straight, but we might as well just go for the move. The momentum was there, we might as well do it. And that's up into second place, which I'm pretty happy with, as, you know, moving from 5th to 2nd is pretty tricky. You know, moving from 15th to 12th is usually a lot easier, moving from 5th to 2nd, as you are coming up against some better players. Now here you see a lot of the players behind went into the pit lane, and that was potentially worrying. I was a good maybe 3 seconds ahead of a lot of those, so they shouldn't trouble me. But the undercut is so powerful here because you are going from hard tyres to soft tyres, and that does make quite a big difference in this race. Usually there is not a gap in the tyre requirement. It's normally medium soft or medium hard rather than hard soft, and that does make quite a big difference on this race. And there's something you have to be wary about. So as we come in here, we're going to try to not make the mistake of refueling like we did in the first race. Alright, we're not going to refuel this time and waste a load of time. But this is going to be quite close, I think, with the guys who did the undercut. Hopefully I can come out and clear air here. Let's take a look. Is it going to be the case? Someone just dashing past on in the mirror. And that is the Mazda. So the Mazda's gained a couple of seconds. In fact, all of these cars have gained a good 2 or 3 seconds here through the undercut. I am in third, but I do not have the momentum up the hill. And so this is going to be really hard to defend against these two cars coming up against me here. The McLaren on my left-hand side now, and then the GTR coming up very quickly as well on the left. And there's not really anything I can do other than punt them off into the Shadow Realm. But that is typically frowned upon, and so we're not going to rely on that kind of strategy today. So down to 5th, and that just gives you a classic example of the undercut, the power of the undercut from the hard tyre to the soft tyre. And boom, I've just lost 3 laps. 3 laps? What am I talking about? I've just lost 3 positions and 3 seconds. I haven't lost 3 laps. It's not that bad. I mean, the undercut can be quite powerful, but not 3 laps powerful. Anyway, this is very much a tough race from here to the end, and this is why I love this race. It is just a tough race. There's just lots of good players here, and you really do have to be on it. You have to be consistent, you have to be fast, not make many mistakes, and only then will you begin to move forward. Now here, lap number 7, the cars in front challenging each other, not taking the best line through there, and so we're going to hang on. Now I do have the tyre advantage, just by 1 lap, but it wasn't really working out for me, and therefore I think you do really want to spend the maximum amount of time on the softer tyre. And so I think the best strategy really for this race is 4 laps on the hard and then 6 laps on the soft. That is the best strategy, as far as I can tell. Because with the undercut, you are just going to lose too much time, and you know, unless you're really bad with tyre wear, then you might just have to do 5 on the soft. But if you can do 6 on the soft, then do that. Anyway, here we're going to work together with the Nissan GTR, and you know, my main concern really was that I wanted to get 3rd. I'm not really fighting here for 4th. I'm playing the long game and trying to make sure that this guy doesn't drop too far away from 3rd place. Of course, I can send the move. As he gets this penalty here, I didn't really have to go for the move because we're going to get it anyway in just a moment. And all I have to do for the next corner is just remain very close. You can see there, Bob's your uncle _GT, very close behind. And so this race could go either way, you know. Could if we make a mistake, there's someone there to pick up the pieces, and we'll lose a position. But here we're gonna move forward. We're not the one making the mistake on this occasion, and so that's good. But can we gain 1 second or 1.1 seconds to this McLaren, who looks pretty planted, looks like they're driving pretty well. So this is going to be quite tricky with 2 and a bit laps remaining in this race. Not much time really But as long as I can get into the slipstream, then things can change quite quickly. With that McLaren, I'm not sure it's too good in a straight line. I don't think it's the best car. And so if I can just get within 3/4 of a second, then things can change quite quickly. As especially with the tyre difference as we approach the final lap. So this is coming up to the final lap now, through the final corner of the penultimate lap. I have dropped away from Bob's Your Uncle behind, and it really is an attacking race now from here to the end. Just trying to catch up with Dan and the McLaren. I was just in the slipstream, but we are about 0.6 seconds behind. And it was a really good battle. I did catch up, but I think ideally I needed an extra lap. The only chance I really have here is if his front left has completely died of death and he makes a big mistake through this final corner. And so all I can do really is just try to gain as much as I can and put some pressure on. However, that wasn't going to be the case. He did a very good job there to remain in third, and for me it was going to be a satisfying 4th place. Ooh, alright, P4. I really enjoyed this race. Just like last year, Watkins Glen, 10 laps, Group 3. It's a fun race. It's a fun race. That was really good. I really hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Goodbye.